Question 1. When evaluating potential hazards within a highly automated chemical processing plant, a risk management team aims to meticulously identify all possible deviations from the intended operational parameters and their subsequent causes and consequences. They need a technique that systematically probes for failures in system logic and physical components, considering how minor process variations could escalate into significant safety or operational incidents. Which risk identification methodology is most precisely suited for this detailed, systematic examination of operational deviations in such a complex industrial environment? Option A. Fault tree analysis, FTA. Option B. Historical incident data review. Option C. Brainstorming session with subject matter experts. Option D. Hazard and operability study, HAZOP. Correct answer is D. Hazard and operability study, HAZOP. Explanation. The question asks to identify the risk identification technique that most effectively uncovers potential failures in complex systems by examining deviations from intended operations and their causes and consequences. HAZOP Hazard and Operability Study is specifically designed for this purpose. It uses guide words e.g. no, more, less, as well as part of, other than, reverse, early, late, applied to process parameters e.g. flow, pressure, temperature level, to systematically identify potential deviations from the design intent. The systematic nature of HAZOP, coupled with its focus on cause and consequence analysis of deviations, makes it highly suitable for uncovering risks in processes and systems that might be missed by more general methods like brainstorming or historical data analysis. Brainstorming is valuable for generating a wide range of ideas, but lacks the structured depth for complex system analysis. Checklists are effective for known or recurring risks, but may not reveal novel or system-specific hazards. Historical data analysis relies on past events and might not account for new or emerging risks. Scenario analysis is useful for exploring future possibilities, but HAZOP's structured approach to operational deviations is more targeted for identifying process-related risks. Therefore, HAZOP is the most appropriate technique for the described scenario. Question 2. Consider a scenario where an international logistics firm, Global Transit Solutions, has identified several potential risks impacting its operations. These include disruptions to supply chains due to geopolitical instability, cyber attacks on its tracking systems, and fluctuations in fuel prices. The firm's risk management framework, aligned with ISO 31000-2018 principles, requires a systematic approach to prioritizing these risks for treatment. What is the most fundamental basis for prioritizing these identified risks within Global Transit Solutions framework? Option A. The organization's defined risk appetite and tolerance level, against which the assessed likelihood and consequence of each risk are compared. Option B. The ease with which each risk can be mitigated, regardless of its potential impact. Option C. The perceived severity of each risk by senior management, irrespective of quantitative assessment. Option D. The number of regulatory bodies that have issued warnings related to each risk category. The correct answer is A. The organization's defined risk appetite and tolerance levels, against which the assessed likelihood and consequence of each risk are compared. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk treatment decisions should be based on the outcome of the risk assessment, specifically the level of risk. Prioritizing risks involves comparing the identified risks against established criteria, which are derived from the organization's risk management policy and objectives. The standard highlights that the effectiveness of risk treatment is evaluated by considering whether the residual risk is acceptable. Therefore, to effectively prioritize risks for treatment, an organization must first establish clear criteria for assessing risk levels and determining acceptability. This involves defining the organization's risk appetite and tolerance. Risks that exceed these defined thresholds are typically considered for priority treatment. The process involves a systematic comparison of the assessed risks against these criteria to determine which risks require immediate attention and which can be managed through less intensive measures or accepted. The ultimate goal is to ensure that resources are allocated efficiently to manage the most significant risks to the organization's objectives. Question 3. A multinational logistics firm, Global Move, operating across diverse regulatory landscapes and facing volatile geopolitical shifts, is reviewing its risk management framework in alignment with ISO 31000-2018. The firm's internal audit department has identified a recurring challenge: Risk assessments for new market entries are often based on incomplete or outdated economic forecasts and political stability reports. This leads to suboptimal resource allocation and unexpected operational disruptions. To enhance the reliability of its risk management process, what fundamental principles should Global Move prioritize in its framework's design and implementation to address this issue? Option A. Prioritize the systematic integration of the best available information into all stages of the risk management process. Option B. Establish a dedicated risk management committee with external consultants to solely focus on data acquisition. Option C. Implement a rigid, one-size-fits-all risk assessment methodology applicable to all market entry scenarios. Option D. Automate risk identification using only historical internal incident data, disregarding external factors. Correct answer is A. Prioritize the systematic integration of the best available information into all stages of the risk management process. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 31000-2018 regarding risk management is that it should be an integral part of an organization's overall governance and management processes. The standard emphasizes that risk management is not a standalone activity, but rather a systematic and iterative process that is embedded within all organizational activities, including decision-making, strategic planning, and operational execution. The foundation of effective risk management, as outlined in the standard, relies on the availability and quality of information used to inform risk assessment and treatment decisions. This information must be the best available, meaning it should be current, relevant, accurate, and sufficient to support informed judgment. When considering the application of risk management principles, particularly in dynamic environments where new information constantly emerges, the organization must ensure its risk management framework and processes are adaptable. The process of establishing the context, assessing risks, treating risks, and monitoring and reviewing risks all depend on the quality of the input data and understanding. Therefore, the effectiveness of risk management is directly correlated with the quality and completeness of the information that underpins each step of the process. This includes understanding the organization's objectives, its internal and external environments, and the nature of the risks themselves. The commitment to using the best available information fosters a culture of informed decision-making and continuous improvement in risk management practices. Question 4. Considering the foundational principles of ISO 31000-2018 for establishing an effective risk management framework, which of the following documentation elements is most critical for demonstrating the organization's formal commitment and guiding the overall approach to risk management at a strategic level? Option A. A formally approved risk management policy that articulates the organization's objectives, commitment, and approach to managing risk. Option B. A detailed risk register documenting all identified risks, their likelihood, impact, and mitigation strategies. Option C. A comprehensive communication plan outlining how risk information will be shared with internal and external stakeholders. Option D. A set of operational procedures for conducting risk assessments at the departmental level. The correct answer is A. A formally approved risk management policy that articulates the organization's objectives, commitment, and approach to managing risk. Explanation. The question probes the fundamental documentation requirements within the ISO 31000-2018 framework for establishing and maintaining a risk management framework. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that the organization's commitment to risk management should be clearly articulated and supported by appropriate documentation. This documentation is crucial for ensuring consistency, accountability, and effective communication of the risk management process throughout the organization. Specifically, the standard highlights the need for documenting the risk management policy, the risk management framework itself, and the risk management process. The risk management policy outlines the organization's objectives, commitment, and approach to managing risk. The framework provides the structure and arrangements for managing risk, including roles, responsibilities, and authorities. The process details the steps involved in identifying, analyzing, evaluating, treating, monitoring, reviewing, communicating, and consulting on risks. Therefore, a comprehensive risk management policy, coupled with a well-defined framework and process documentation, forms the bedrock of an effective risk management system, as per ISO 31000-2018. This includes documenting the scope of risk management, the criteria for risk assessment, and the methods for risk treatment. The documentation ensures that all stakeholders understand their roles and the overall approach to risk management, facilitating integration into organizational activities and decision-making. Question 5. When establishing an organization-wide risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018, what fundamental principle underpins the strategic planning of communication and consultation activities to ensure their efficacy and relevance across diverse stakeholder groups? Option A. Centralized reporting of all risk-related incidents to a single oversight committee. Option B. Reactive dissemination of risk assessment findings to regulatory bodies as required by law. Option C. Ad hoc information sharing based on the availability of data and management discretion. Option D. Proactive integration and tailored engagement based on stakeholder needs and context. The correct answer is D. Proactive integration and tailored engagement based on stakeholder needs and context. Explanation. The ISO 31000-2018 standard emphasizes that communication and consultation are integral throughout the entire risk management process, not merely a post hoc activity. Effective communication ensures that stakeholders are informed about risks, the risk management process, and its outcomes. Consultation involves seeking input and feedback from stakeholders, fostering engagement, and ensuring that decisions are well-informed and accepted. The standard outlines that these activities should be tailored to the specific needs of the organization and its stakeholders. This includes identifying who needs to be communicated with, what information they require when they need it, and how it should be delivered. It also involves understanding their perspectives, concerns, and expectations regarding risk. The objective is to support decision-making, improve awareness and understanding of risk, and achieve better risk management outcomes. Therefore, planning these activities upfront, considering the context and the diverse needs of various internal and external parties, is crucial for the success of the risk management framework. This proactive approach ensures that communication and consultation are integrated and contribute meaningfully to the organization's risk appetite and overall objectives. Question 6. When implementing quantitative risk analysis within an organization adhering to ISO 31000-2018 principles, what is the primary objective concerning the management of uncertainty and the substantiation of risk treatment decisions? Option A. To establish a definitive causal link between specific risk events and their impacts, eliminating all residual ambiguity for absolute certainty in decision-making. Option B. To systematically reduce the range of uncertainty surrounding risk likelihood and consequence estimates, facilitating more objective comparisons and informed selection of risk treatments. Option C. To solely focus on identifying the most significant risks through statistical modeling, disregarding qualitative assessments that may introduce subjectivity. Option D. To convert all identified risks into quantifiable metrics, thereby enabling precise probabilistic forecasting of future events and their exact financial implications. The correct answer is D. To convert all identified risks into quantifiable metrics, thereby enabling precise probabilistic forecasting of future events and their exact financial implications. Explanation. The question probes the understanding of how quantitative risk analysis aligns with the principles of ISO 31000-2018, specifically regarding the management of uncertainty and the generation of credible information for decision-making. Quantitative risk analysis involves the use of numerical data and analytical techniques to estimate the likelihood and impact of risks. This process is crucial for providing a more objective basis for risk assessment, moving beyond qualitative judgments. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management should be an integral part of organizational processes and that decisions should be based on the best available information. Quantitative methods, when applied appropriately, contribute to this by providing a structured way to measure and compare risks, thus supporting more informed choices about risk treatment. The standard advocates for a systematic approach to risk management, and quantitative analysis is a tool that can enhance the rigor of this system. It allows for the exploration of different scenarios and the potential financial or operational consequences, thereby aiding in the selection of the most effective risk responses. The core idea is to reduce uncertainty in the assessment process to a degree that enables confident decision-making, even though complete elimination of uncertainty is not possible. Question 7. A global logistics firm, Trans Global Freight, is undertaking a comprehensive review of its risk management framework in alignment with ISO 31000-2018. They have conducted a thorough SWOT analysis, identifying a key internal weakness as an aging IT infrastructure and a significant external opportunity in the growing e-commerce market in emerging economies. While the SWOT analysis provides valuable insights into the firm's strategic position, how does this tool primarily fit into the integrated risk management process mandated by ISO 31000-2018? Option A. It is a comprehensive risk management process in itself, superseding the need for other ISO 31000-2018 requirements. Option B. It is the sole method for evaluating the significance of identified risks, directly determining treatment priorities. Option C. It exclusively addresses the implementation of risk treatments, providing detailed action plans for mitigation. Option D. It serves as a foundational input for risk identification and analysis, helping to define the context and potential sources of risk. Correct answer is D. It serves as a foundational input for risk identification and analysis, helping to define the context and potential sources of risk. Explanation. The core principle being tested here is the strategic application of a SWOT analysis within the broader framework of ISO 31000-2018. A SWOT analysis, while a valuable tool for understanding an organization's internal and external environment, is not a standalone risk management process. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management is an integral part of an organization's governance and decision-making. It requires a systematic approach to identifying, analyzing, evaluating, treating, monitoring, and communicating risks. A SWOT analysis primarily contributes to the identification and analysis phases by highlighting internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats. These identified factors then inform the subsequent risk management activities, such as defining risk criteria, assessing the likelihood and consequence of identified risks, and selecting appropriate risk treatments. Therefore, while crucial for providing context and input, a SWOT analysis itself does not constitute the entirety of the risk management process as defined by the standard. The standard advocates for a continuous and iterative process that goes beyond a static environmental scan. Question 8. When an organization is developing its risk criteria in accordance with ISO 31000-2018, which foundational element must be explicitly considered to ensure the established thresholds for acceptable risk are meaningful and aligned with the organization's strategic objectives and capacity for exposure? Option A. The prevailing market sentiment and competitor risk management practices in the industry. Option B. The projected economic growth rate and inflation figures for the upcoming fiscal year. Option C. The organization's defined risk appetite and tolerance levels for various risk categories. Option D. The historical frequency of minor incidents and near misses recorded over the past decade. The correct answer is C. The organization's defined risk appetite and tolerance levels for various risk categories. Explanation. The process of establishing risk criteria involves defining the nature and types of consequences, the likelihood of those consequences occurring, the time period over which consequences may occur, and how risk levels will be determined. It also requires considering the organization's risk appetite. Risk appetite is the amount and type of risk that an organization is willing to pursue or retain. It is a critical input for setting risk criteria because the criteria must align with what the organization is prepared to accept. The nature and types of consequences, such as financial loss, reputational damage, or regulatory noncompliance, need to be categorized. Likelihood is typically defined using qualitative or quantitative scales, and the time period for assessing consequences is crucial for relevance. The risk level is then determined by combining the consequence and likelihood, often using a risk matrix. However, without considering the organization's willingness to accept risk appetite, the established criteria might lead to decisions that either expose the organization to unacceptable levels of risk or hinder its ability to achieve objectives by being overly risk-averse. Therefore, risk appetite directly influences the thresholds and scales used within the risk criteria. Question 9. Consider a multinational corporation, Ethelred Innovations, planning to launch a novel bio-integrated computing device in the South American market. Their risk assessment team is employing scenario analysis to understand potential challenges. They have identified key uncertainties such as fluctuating currency exchange rates, evolving intellectual property laws in target countries, potential for rapid technological obsolescence of their device, and the socio-political stability of key distribution hubs. Which of the following best represents the primary objective of applying scenario analysis in this context, as guided by the principles of ISO 31000-2018? Option A. Develop a comprehensive understanding of the potential range of future outcomes and their implications for achieving Ethelred Innovations' market entry objectives. Option B. To definitively predict the exact likelihood and impact of each identified risk, enabling precise quantitative risk mitigation budgeting. Option C. To create a single, most probable future state for the South American market to streamline operational planning and resource allocation. Option D. To identify and eliminate all potential negative risks before market entry, ensuring a guaranteed positive return on investment. The correct answer is A. To develop a comprehensive understanding of the potential range of future outcomes and their implications for achieving Ethelred Innovations' market entry objectives. Explanation. The scenario describes a situation where an organization is considering a new market entry. The risk management process, as outlined in ISO 31000-2018, involves several stages. Scenario analysis is a technique used to explore potential future states and their implications. In this context, when assessing the risks associated with entering a new market, it is crucial to understand how various external and internal factors might interact to create different outcomes. ISO 31000 emphasizes that risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. Therefore, to effectively manage the risks of market entry, the organization needs to consider a range of plausible future scenarios that could impact its objectives. These scenarios should encompass a variety of conditions, such as economic downturns, regulatory changes, competitor actions, and shifts in consumer behavior. By developing and analyzing these scenarios, the organization can identify potential risks and opportunities that might not be apparent through simpler risk identification methods. This allows for the development of more robust and adaptable strategies. The purpose is not to predict the future with certainty, but to enhance preparedness and decision-making by understanding the range of possibilities and their potential consequences. This proactive approach helps in formulating appropriate risk responses and contingency plans, thereby improving the likelihood of achieving the organization's objectives in the new market. Question 10. Considering the iterative nature of risk management as outlined in ISO 31000-2018, what is the primary objective of the monitoring and review component in relation to the overall effectiveness of the risk management framework? Option A. To conduct a one-time assessment of the risk management process after its initial implementation to confirm adherence to established procedures. Option B. Solely focus on tracking the financial impact of realized risks and calculating the return on investment for risk mitigation activities. Option C. To ensure the risk management framework remains suitable, adequate, and effective in achieving the organization's objectives and is aligned with its context. Option D. To generate a comprehensive report detailing all identified risks and their associated mitigation strategies for archival purposes. The correct answer is C. To ensure the risk management framework remains suitable, adequate, and effective in achieving the organization's objectives and is aligned with its context. Explanation. The monitoring and review process within ISO 31000-2018 is crucial for ensuring the effectiveness and suitability of the risk management framework and its outcomes. It involves a continuous cycle of checking for changes in the external and internal context, the performance of controls, the risk appetite, and the overall risk management process itself. This is not a one-time activity but an ongoing commitment. The purpose is to identify emerging risks, reassess existing risks, and adapt the risk management strategy as circumstances evolve. Effective monitoring and review provide assurance that the organization is achieving its objectives and that the risk management system remains aligned with its needs. This process feeds back into the risk management process, enabling continuous improvement and ensuring that decisions are based on current and relevant information. For instance, if a new regulatory requirement emerges, such as updated data privacy laws that impact how customer information is handled, The monitoring and review process would flag this change. This would then trigger a reassessment of the risks associated with data handling, potentially leading to the implementation of new controls or the modification of existing ones to ensure compliance and protect the organization from associated risks. The insights gained from monitoring and review are vital for informed decision-making and for maintaining the integrity of the risk management system over time. Question 11. Considering the foundational principles of risk management as espoused by ISO 31000-2018 and their application within an occupational health and safety management system, OSHMS, frameworks such as ISO 45001, what is the most effective approach to ensure the systematic identification, assessment, and treatment of OHS risks across all organizational functions? Option A. Establishing a dedicated OHS risk management department with exclusive responsibility for all OHS risk-related activities. Option B. Developing a separate standalone OHS risk register that is updated annually by the OHS department. Option C. Integrating OHS risk management processes into the organization's overall governance, strategic planning, and operational decision-making structures. Option D. Implementing a comprehensive set of OHS policies and procedures that are communicated to all employees without explicit integration into strategic planning. The correct answer is C. Integrating OHS risk management processes into the organization's overall governance, strategic planning, and operational decision-making structures. Explanation. The core principle of a risk management framework, as outlined in ISO 31000-2018, is to integrate risk management into all organizational activities. This integration is crucial for ensuring that risk considerations are a fundamental part of decision-making and that the organization can achieve its objectives. When considering an occupational health and safety management system, OSHMS, aligned with ISO 45001, which itself is built upon the framework principles of ISO 31000. The most effective way to ensure the systematic management of OHS risks is to embed these processes within the organization's overall governance and strategic planning. This means that OHS risk management is not an isolated activity, but is part of the established structures, policies, and procedures that guide the organization's operations and decision-making at all levels. This proactive approach ensures that OHS risks are identified, assessed, and treated in conjunction with other organizational risks, leading to a more holistic and effective management system that supports the organization's overall objectives and enhances its resilience. Question 12. Consider a multinational corporation, Ethelred Dynamics, assessing the potential impact of cyber attacks on its global supply chain operations. They have identified several key variables influencing the financial loss from such an event, including the duration of system downtime, the cost of data recovery, the number of affected transactions, and the market share erosion rate. Understand which of these variables most critically influences the total financial loss. Ethelred Dynamics decides to employ a risk assessment technique that systematically alters one variable at a time, while keeping others constant at their expected values. What is the primary purpose of employing this specific analytical approach in their risk assessment process, according to the principles of ISO 31000-2018? Option A. To establish a definitive probability distribution for each identified risk factor. Option B. To validate the accuracy of the initial risk identification and scope definition phases. Option C. To directly quantify the likelihood of a successful mitigation strategy being implemented. Option D. To determine the degree to which the overall risk exposure is affected by changes in individual input variables. Correct answer is D. To determine the degree to which the overall risk exposure is affected by changes in individual input variables. Explanation. Sensitivity analysis is a crucial technique in risk management for understanding how changes in uncertain variables affect the outcome of a risk assessment. It helps identify which variables have the most significant impact on the overall risk, thereby focusing mitigation efforts. For instance, if a project's success depends on factors like material cost, labor availability, and regulatory approval timelines, sensitivity analysis would systematically vary each of these factors within a plausible range to observe the resulting changes in the project's net present value or completion date. A high sensitivity to material cost means that even small fluctuations in material prices can drastically alter the project's financial viability. Conversely, if regulatory approval timelines have low sensitivity, minor delays in this area might not significantly impact the overall outcome. This process directly supports the principle of integrating risk management into all organizational activities and decision-making, as outlined in ISO 31000. It provides a more nuanced understanding than a simple best-case or worst-case scenario by isolating the impact of individual variables. The insights gained from sensitivity analysis inform the selection and prioritization of risk responses, ensuring that resources are allocated to address the most critical risk drivers. It is an iterative process that can be refined as more information becomes available. Question 13. A global logistics firm, Swift Cargo, operating in multiple jurisdictions, is evaluating a newly identified risk associated with potential cyber attacks targeting its proprietary shipment tracking software. Analysis indicates a moderate likelihood of a successful breach and a high potential impact, including significant financial losses, reputational damage, and disruption to its supply chain operations, which could lead to penalties under data protection regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. The firm has established a risk appetite that tolerates minor operational disruptions, but has zero tolerance for any breach of customer data or significant financial impact. Considering the firm's risk appetite and the analysis of this specific cyber risk, what is the primary determinant for Swift Cargo to take action to treat this risk? Option A. The moderate likelihood of the event occurring is sufficient justification for immediate treatment. Option B. The existence of regulatory obligations, such as CCPA, mandates a response without further evaluation. Option C. The potential for a cyber attack is identified, regardless of its assessed impact or likelihood. Option D. The analyzed risk level exceeds the firm's defined risk acceptance criteria, necessitating a response to manage it. The correct answer is D. The analyzed risk level exceeds the firm's defined risk acceptance criteria, necessitating a response to manage it. Explanation: ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes that determining the need for action is a crucial step in the risk management process, particularly after risks have been identified and analyzed. This determination is not arbitrary, but is guided by the organization's risk appetite and tolerance, as well as the potential consequences of the risk event occurring. The standard outlines that decisions on whether to treat a risk, retain it, transfer it, or avoid it are based on a comparison of the analyzed risk level against the established criteria for risk acceptance. These criteria are informed by the organization's objectives, legal and regulatory obligations, and its overall strategic direction. The process involves evaluating the significance of the risk in terms of its likelihood and impact, and then assessing whether this significance exceeds the level the organization is willing to bear. For instance, if a risk's potential impact on achieving a key organizational objective, such as maintaining regulatory compliance with data privacy laws like GDPR, is deemed to be unacceptable according to the organization's defined risk criteria, then action is required. This action could involve implementing controls to reduce the likelihood or impact, or a strategic decision to avoid the activity altogether if the risk cannot be adequately managed. The core principle is to ensure that the organization's risk profile remains within acceptable boundaries, thereby safeguarding its ability to achieve its objectives. Question 14. A global logistics firm, Swift Ship Global, is assessing the potential financial impact of a supply chain disruption due to unforeseen geopolitical events and adverse weather patterns affecting key shipping lanes. They have identified several variables influencing the total cost of delayed shipments, including the duration of the disruption, the alternative transportation costs, and the penalty clauses in client contracts. To gain a more robust understanding of the potential financial exposure beyond a single best-case and worst-case scenario, how would the application of a Monte Carlo simulation, as conceptually supported by ISO 31000, 2018 principles, best inform their risk management strategy? Option A. By generating a probability distribution of potential financial losses, enabling Swift Ship Global to quantify the likelihood of exceeding specific financial thresholds and inform decisions on contingency funding and insurance coverage. Option B. By identifying the single most probable cause of disruption and recommending a singular mitigation strategy focused solely on that identified cause, thereby simplifying the risk response. Option C, by providing a single, definitive monetary value representing the maximum potential financial loss, which can then be directly incorporated into the organization's financial statements as a contingent liability. Option D, by performing a deterministic analysis that calculates the precise financial impact based on the most likely values for each variable, assuming no variability or interdependencies. The correct answer is A, by generating a probability distribution of potential financial losses, enabling SwiftShip Global to quantify the likelihood of exceeding specific financial thresholds and inform decisions on contingency funding and insurance coverage. Explanation: the core principle of Monte Carlo simulation in risk management, as it relates to ISO 31000-2018, is its ability to model the probability distribution of potential outcomes arising from the combined effect of multiple uncertain variables. Instead of relying on single-point estimates, it uses random sampling from defined probability distributions for each input variable to generate a large number of possible scenarios. By iterating this process thousands or millions of times, a comprehensive picture of the range and likelihood of outcomes emerges. This approach is particularly valuable for complex risks, where interdependencies between factors are significant. Simulation outputs a distribution of results, allowing for the identification of key risk drivers, the assessment of the likelihood of exceeding certain thresholds, e.g., financial loss, project delay, and the evaluation of the effectiveness of different risk treatments by observing their impact on the simulated outcome distributions. It moves beyond simple sensitivity analysis by capturing the interplay of multiple uncertainties simultaneously. This aligns with the ISO 31000 emphasis on a systematic, iterative process that considers the nature and level of risk, and the need for reliable information for decision-making. The output is not a single definitive answer, but a probabilistic forecast that informs risk appetite and tolerance. Question 15. Consider an organization that has formally documented its risk management policy and appointed a chief risk officer. Despite these initial steps, the risk management framework appears to be inconsistently applied across different departments, with some units treating it as a compliance exercise rather than a strategic tool. Recent internal audits indicate a lack of proactive risk identification and a tendency to address risks reactively. According to ISO 31000-2018 principles, what is the most fundamental deficiency contributing to this situation? Option A, insufficient integration of risk management into organizational processes and decision-making at all levels. Option B, over-reliance on external consultants for the development of risk management methodologies. Option C, inadequate frequency of risk assessment reviews conducted by the risk management department. Option D, lack of a comprehensive risk register that details all potential threats and opportunities. The correct answer is A, insufficient integration of risk management into organizational processes and decision-making at all levels. Explanation: the ISO 31000-2018 standard emphasizes that leadership and commitment are foundational to establishing and maintaining an effective risk management framework. This principle is operationalized through the explicit integration of risk management into an organization's governance, strategy, and objectives. Specifically, Clause 5.2 of the standard, integration, highlights that risk management should be an integral part of all organizational activities, including decision-making, strategy development, and the achievement of objectives. This means that leadership must actively ensure that risk management is not a separate, siloed function, but rather a pervasive element woven into the fabric of the organization. This integration is demonstrated when leadership champions risk-informed decision-making, allocates appropriate resources, and ensures that risk management processes are aligned with the organization's purpose and context. The visible and active involvement of top management in setting the tone, directing the risk management process, and ensuring accountability is a direct manifestation of this commitment. Without this pervasive integration and visible leadership support, risk management efforts are likely to be superficial and ineffective, failing to achieve their intended purpose of enhancing resilience and achieving objectives. Question 16. Considering the principles outlined in ISO 31000-2018 for risk assessment, which statement most accurately characterizes the role and nature of a risk matrix within an organization's risk management framework? Option A, a universally standardized quantitative instrument that precisely calculates the financial impact of all identified risks. Option B, a regulatory compliance requirement that dictates the exact methodology for risk evaluation across all industries. Option C, a context-specific visualization tool for prioritizing risks based on defined likelihood and consequence scales, supporting informed decision-making. Option D, a definitive and objective measurement of risk exposure, eliminating the need for further qualitative analysis. Correct answer is C, a context-specific visualization tool for prioritizing risks based on defined likelihood and consequence scales, supporting informed decision-making. Explanation: ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes that a risk matrix is a tool for visualizing and prioritizing risks based on their likelihood and consequence. It is not a definitive measure of risk, but rather an aid to decision-making. The standard highlights that the scales used for likelihood and consequence should be clearly defined and appropriate for the context of the organization. The specific configuration of a risk matrix, including the number of intervals and the qualitative descriptors used, can influence risk perception and treatment decisions. While a common approach involves a 5x5 matrix, the standard does not mandate a specific size or format. The key is that the matrix supports the organization's risk assessment process and facilitates communication about risks. The effectiveness of a risk matrix is contingent on the quality of the input data and the consistent application of the defined scales. The standard promotes a flexible approach, allowing organizations to adapt the matrix to their specific needs and the nature of the risks they face, rather than adhering to a rigid, universally prescribed structure. Therefore, the most appropriate description of a risk matrix in the context of ISO 31000, 2018 is one that is adaptable and context-specific, supporting informed decision-making. Question 17. Consider an organization that has implemented a business continuity management system, BCMS, in accordance with ISO 22301. To ensure that the BCMS effectively supports the organization's overall risk management objectives as outlined in ISO 31000, which of the following integration strategies would be most aligned with the principles of a robust and proactive risk-informed approach to resilience? Option A, conducting separate, independent risk assessments for business continuity and general organizational risks, with findings from the BCMS risk assessments being periodically reported to the main risk management function. Option B, embedding the risk management process for business continuity within the BCMS lifecycle, ensuring that risk identification, analysis, and treatment directly inform continuity strategy development and review. Option C, prioritizing the development of business continuity plans based on historical incident data, with risk assessment being a secondary consideration to ensure operational recovery capabilities are prioritized. Option D, focusing the BCMS risk management efforts solely on threats that have a high probability of occurrence, neglecting lower probability but potentially high impact events that could affect critical business functions. Correct answer is B, embedding the risk management process for business continuity within the BCMS lifecycle, ensuring that risk identification, analysis, and treatment directly inform continuity strategy development and review. Explanation: the core principle of integrating risk management with business continuity, as guided by ISO 31000 and exemplified in ISO 22301, lies in proactive identification and treatment of potential disruptions that could impact an organization's ability to deliver its critical functions. When an organization establishes a business continuity management system, BCMS, it inherently engages in risk assessment activities to understand the threats and vulnerabilities that could lead to a disruption. The subsequent development of business continuity strategies and plans is a direct response to these identified risks. Therefore, the most effective approach to ensuring that the BCMS aligns with the overall risk management framework is to embed the risk management process within the BCMS lifecycle. This means that the identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment of risks that could impact business continuity are not separate exercises, but are integral components of the BCMS. This integration ensures that the strategies developed are risk-informed, and that the organization is continuously monitoring and reviewing the risk landscape relevant to its continuity objectives. This approach fosters a holistic view of resilience, moving beyond mere response to proactive management of threats to critical operations. Question 18. Consider a scenario where an international technology consortium is attempting to forecast the potential long-term strategic risks associated with the widespread adoption of quantum computing. Given the nascent stage of the technology and the potential for significant, yet largely unknown, impacts, which risk assessment methodology, leveraging expert judgment in a structured and iterative manner to achieve a consensus on the nature and magnitude of these future risks, will be most aligned with the principles of risk management as outlined in ISO 31000-2018 for this specific challenge. Option A, nominal group technique. Option B, brainstorming session. Option C, Delphi technique. Option D, fault tree analysis. The correct answer is C, Delphi technique. Explanation. The Delphi technique is a structured communication method, originally developed as a systematic, interactive forecasting method which relies on a panel of experts. The process aims to achieve a consensus of opinion from a group of individuals. In the context of risk management as guided by ISO 31000-2018, the Delphi technique is particularly useful for identifying and assessing risks when there is uncertainty or a lack of historical data, and when direct interaction among experts might lead to biases or groupthink. The core principle is to gather expert opinions anonymously through multiple rounds of questionnaires, with feedback provided to the participants after each round. This iterative process allows experts to revise their initial judgments based on the aggregated opinions of the group, while maintaining anonymity to prevent undue influence. The feedback loop typically includes statistical summaries of the responses and often the reasoning behind differing opinions. The objective is to converge towards a more reliable and informed consensus on risk likelihood, impact, or other relevant risk parameters. It is not about reaching a perfect numerical solution, but rather a reasoned and agreed-upon perspective. The technique's strength lies in its ability to harness collective intelligence while mitigating the drawbacks of face-to-face group interactions. Question 19. A consultancy firm specializing in cloud infrastructure security is assessing its external context to inform its risk management framework. The firm operates internationally, serving clients across various jurisdictions. Which of the following external factors, as per the principles outlined in ISO 31000-2018, most directly and immediately shape the firm's strategic risk appetite and the types of services it prioritizes? Option A. The rise in remote work trends and their impact on organizational network security perimeters. Option B. The increasing number of countries implementing stringent data localization laws and cross-border data transfer restrictions. Option C. Shifting global consumer preferences towards subscription-based software models over perpetual licenses. Option D. The proliferation of new encryption algorithms and their adoption rates within the financial sector. Correct answer is D. The proliferation of new encryption algorithms and their adoption rates within the financial sector. Explanation. The external context of an organization, as defined by ISO 31000-2018, encompasses the environment in which the organization aims to achieve its objectives. This context is crucial for understanding the risks that could affect the achievement of those objectives. The standard categorizes external factors into several domains, often summarized by the PESTLE framework: political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. Analyzing these factors helps identify opportunities and threats. Political factors include government policies, regulations, and political stability. Economic factors relate to market conditions, inflation, interest rates, and economic growth. Social factors encompass cultural norms, demographics, and public attitudes. Technological factors involve advancements, innovation, and obsolescence. Legal factors are laws, standards, and judicial decisions. Environmental factors concern ecological aspects, climate change, and natural resources. When considering the external context for a cybersecurity firm specializing in data protection, the increasing global regulatory landscape concerning data privacy, such as the GDPR or similar national laws, is a significant legal factor. This directly influences the firm's service offering, compliance requirements, and the types of risks it needs to manage for its clients. Therefore, the evolving legal framework for data privacy is a prime example of an external context factor that a risk management process must actively consider. Question 20. When establishing the internal context for a comprehensive risk management program, an organization must meticulously examine its operational environment. This internal assessment encompasses a detailed review of factors such as its established governance framework, the intricate web of its organizational structure, the precise definition of roles and associated accountabilities, the efficacy of its existing policies and procedures, and the alignment of its strategic objectives with its overall mission. It also involves evaluating the adequacy of resources, the depth of organizational knowledge, the robustness of its information systems, and the dynamics of its internal stakeholder relationships. Considering this detailed internal scrutiny, which of the following elements, by its very nature, falls outside the scope of an organization's internal context analysis as per ISO 31000-2018? Option A, the prevailing external regulatory and legal landscape. Option B, the organization's established reporting lines and hierarchical structures. Option C, the strategic goals and operational objectives set by leadership. Option D, the defined responsibilities and authorities assigned to personnel. The correct answer is A, the prevailing external regulatory and legal landscape. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes understanding the organization's internal context as a foundational step in risk management. This involves a comprehensive review of various internal factors that can influence how risks are identified, analyzed, evaluated, treated, and monitored. These factors include the organization's governance structure, which dictates decision-making processes and oversight, its organizational structure, defining reporting lines and departmental interactions, and the clarity of roles and accountabilities, ensuring individuals understand their responsibilities in risk management. Furthermore, existing policies and procedures provide the framework for risk-related activities, while the organization's objectives and strategies define the landscape within which risks are managed. The availability and allocation of resources, including financial, human, and technological assets, directly impact the capacity to manage risks. The level of knowledge, skills, and experience within the organization, along with the effectiveness of its information systems for data collection and communication, are also critical. Finally, the nature of stakeholder relationships, both internal and external, influences perceptions of risk and the acceptance of risk treatments. A thorough analysis of these interconnected elements allows for more tailored and effective risk management framework aligned with the organization's unique circumstances and goals. The question asks to identify which element is not part of the internal context analysis as defined by ISO 31000-2018. External regulations and legal frameworks, while important for the overall risk management process, are explicitly categorized as part of the external context, not the internal context. Therefore, external regulations are the correct answer. Question 21. Considering the principles of ISO 31000-2018, which aspect of the risk management process is most directly responsible for feeding insights back into the organization's strategic planning and operational adjustments to foster continual improvement? Option A, the comprehensive documentation of all identified risks and their associated likelihood and consequence ratings in a risk register. Option B, the initial establishment of the organizational context and the definition of risk appetite prior to any risk assessment activities. Option C, the systematic review of risk treatment effectiveness and the identification of emerging risks during the monitoring and review phase. Option D, the communication and consultation activities undertaken with external stakeholders regarding potential threats to organizational reputation. The correct answer is C, the systematic review of risk treatment effectiveness and the identification of emerging risks during the monitoring and review phase. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management is a fundamental enabler of continual improvement within an organization. This is achieved through the iterative nature of the risk management process, which involves establishing context, assessing risks, identification, analysis, evaluation, treating risks, monitoring and review, and communication and consultation. The standard posits that the outcomes of these activities, particularly the monitoring and review phase, provide crucial feedback. This feedback loop informs adjustments to the organization's objectives, strategies, controls, and the overall risk management framework itself. By systematically analyzing the effectiveness of risk treatments, the identification of new or changing risks, and the overall performance of the risk management process, organizations can identify areas for enhancement. This learning and adaptation are central to improving decision-making, operational efficiency, and achieving strategic goals. The integration of risk management into governance and leadership structures further supports this, ensuring that insights gained from risk management are used to refine organizational practices and processes, thereby fostering a culture of continuous learning and adaptation, which is a cornerstone of sustained performance and resilience. Question 22. When a multinational corporation, Astra Tech Innovations, is conducting a quantitative risk assessment for its new product launch in a volatile emerging market, and its established risk appetite statement specifies that the maximum acceptable financial loss from any single market entry failure is capped at 2% of the company's annual net profit. How does the quantitative output of this assessment directly inform the decision-making process regarding risk treatment strategies? Option A. It necessitates the immediate implementation of all identified risk mitigation measures, regardless of cost-benefit analysis, to ensure compliance with internal risk tolerance levels. Option B. It provides a numerical basis for comparing the potential financial impact of identified risks against the defined risk appetite, thereby guiding decisions on whether to accept, mitigate, transfer, or avoid specific risks. Option C. It primarily serves to validate the qualitative risk assessments already performed, offering no direct input into the selection of risk treatment options. Option D. It requires the company to revise its risk appetite statement to align with the calculated risk exposures, rather than guiding treatment decisions. The correct answer is B. It provides a numerical basis for comparing the potential financial impact of identified risks against the defined risk appetite, thereby guiding decisions on whether to accept, mitigate, transfer, or avoid specific risks. Explanation. The core of quantitative risk analysis within the ISO 31000 framework involves assigning numerical values to the likelihood and consequence of risks to enable a more objective assessment and prioritization. While ISO 31000 itself does not mandate specific quantitative methods, it emphasizes the importance of consistency and comparability in risk assessment. A common approach to quantitative risk analysis involves establishing a risk matrix where likelihood and consequence are mapped. For instance, if a risk has a likelihood of occurring once every 5 years, frequency equals 0, 2 per year, and a potential consequence that could result in a financial loss of $1,000,000, the risk exposure could be quantified. However, the question focuses on the application of quantitative analysis to inform decision-making, particularly in the context of risk treatment and the establishment of risk acceptance criteria. When an organization has a defined risk appetite, which is the amount and type of risk that an organization is willing to pursue or retain, quantitative analysis helps in determining whether identified risks fall within or exceed this appetite. For example, if the risk appetite for financial loss due to operational disruptions is set at a maximum of $500,000 per annum, and a quantitative analysis of a specific risk indicates an expected annual loss of $750,000, this risk clearly exceeds the appetite. This quantitative insight directly informs decisions regarding the necessity and urgency of risk treatment action to reduce the exposure to an acceptable level. It allows for a more precise comparison of the costs of treatment against the potential benefits of reduced risk, thereby supporting informed decision-making regarding resource allocation for risk mitigation. The ability to measure risk numerically provides a basis for comparing different risk scenarios and for monitoring the effectiveness of risk treatments over time. Question 23. A global logistics firm, Swift Ship, is assessing the potential impact of geopolitical instability on its supply chain routes. They have access to historical data on route disruptions, current news feeds regarding international relations, and expert opinions from geopolitical analysts. However, the precise timing and nature of future geopolitical events remain highly uncertain. According to the principles of ISO 31000-2018, how should Swift Ship approach the risk assessment of geopolitical instability given this information landscape? Option A. Systematically gather, analyze, and integrate all available historical data expert opinions, and current intelligence, while explicitly acknowledging and documenting the inherent uncertainties and limitations of the information used to inform the risk assessment and treatment decisions. Option B. Prioritize current news feeds as they reflect the most immediate and relevant information, and give minimal weight to historical data and expert opinions, which may not accurately represent the current or future risk environment. Option C. Conduct a risk assessment based only on expert opinions, as their specialized knowledge is assumed to be sufficient to overcome the uncertainties present in historical data and current news, thereby providing a definitive forecast of future events. Option D. Rely solely on historical data of past disruptions, as this represents the most concrete and verifiable information, and disregard current news feeds and expert opinions due to their subjective and potentially speculative nature. The correct answer is A. Systematically gather, analyze, and integrate all available historical data, expert opinions, and current intelligence, while explicitly acknowledging and documenting the inherent uncertainties and limitations of the information used to inform the risk assessment and treatment decisions. Explanation. ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes that risk management is an iterative process, and the effectiveness of any risk treatment decision is contingent upon the quality and completeness of the information available at the time of decision-making. The standard highlights the importance of using the best available information to inform risk assessment and treatment. This includes considering data from past events, expert judgment simulations, and projections, acknowledging that information may be incomplete, uncertain, or evolving. The principle of using the best available information underpins the entire risk management framework, ensuring that decisions are as robust as possible given the circumstances. It means that risk managers must actively seek, evaluate, and utilize relevant information from internal and external sources, and critically assess its limitations. The standard does not mandate the use of perfect or complete information, as this is often unattainable, but rather the diligent application of the most reliable and relevant information that can be reasonably obtained and used to support informed decision-making within the context of the organization's objectives and risk appetite. Question 24. An international logistics firm, Global Transit Solutions, is developing its risk management framework in alignment with ISO 31000, 2018. They are in the process of defining their risk criteria for potential disruptions to their global supply chain. The firm's board has indicated a strong preference for minimizing financial losses and maintaining a high level of customer satisfaction, even if it means incurring slightly higher operational costs in the short term. Considering the principles of ISO 31000, 2018, which of the following best reflects the integration of risk appetite into the establishment of risk criteria for Global Transit Solutions? Option A. Adopting risk criteria that prioritize operational efficiency above all else, even if it means accepting a higher probability of moderate financial losses and a decline in customer service levels. Option B. Defining risk criteria solely based on the frequency of past disruptions, without considering the potential severity of future consequences or the organization's tolerance for risk. Option C. Establishing criteria that classify any disruption leading to a financial loss exceeding $1 million or a customer satisfaction rating drop below $90% as unacceptable, irrespective of the likelihood of such an event occurring within a 12-month period. Option D. Setting criteria that only focus on the financial impact of supply chain disruptions, ignoring reputational damage or operational downtime. The correct answer is C. Establishing criteria that classify any disruption leading to a financial loss exceeding $1 million or a customer satisfaction rating drop below $90% as unacceptable, irrespective of the likelihood of such an event occurring within a 12-month period. Explanation. The core of establishing risk criteria lies in defining what constitutes an acceptable level of risk, considering both the likelihood of an event and the magnitude of its consequences. ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes that risk criteria are the terms of reference against which the significance of a risk is evaluated. This involves determining the nature and types of consequences, which can be financial, reputational, operational, or safety-related, and assigning a level of severity to each. Likelihood is defined as the chance of something happening, often expressed qualitatively e.g., rare, likely, or quantitatively e.g., probability. The time period over which the likelihood is considered is crucial, as it influences the overall risk assessment. The risk level is then determined by combining the likelihood and consequence, typically through a risk matrix or a similar methodology. Risk appetite, which is the amount and type of risk an organization is willing to pursue or retain, directly informs the establishment of risk criteria. For instance, if an organization has a low-risk appetite for safety incidents, its risk criteria will stipulate that even a low likelihood of a severe safety consequence is unacceptable. The process of setting risk criteria is iterative and should be reviewed regularly to ensure it remains relevant to the organization's objectives and external context. It is not about a single calculation, but a structured approach to defining acceptable risk boundaries. Question 25. Consider a multinational corporation, Ethelred Dynamics, operating in the highly regulated pharmaceutical sector. Ethelred Dynamics is implementing a new enterprise-wide risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018. To foster a culture of risk awareness and ensure comprehensive risk identification, the risk management team is developing communication protocols. They are particularly focused on how to effectively convey complex risk assessment findings, such as the potential impact of novel regulatory changes in emerging markets on product development timelines and market access, to a diverse audience including research scientists, legal counsel, marketing executives, and frontline manufacturing staff. Which of the following approaches best embodies the principles of transparency and inclusivity in communicating these risk findings within Ethelred Dynamics? Option A. Disseminating a single, highly technical report detailing all risk factors, methodologies, and quantitative impact assessments, with a limited queue and a session scheduled only after all internal approvals are secured. Option B. Delegating all communication regarding risk findings to individual department heads, with no overarching corporate guidance on the clarity or comprehensiveness of the information shared. Option C. Relying solely on the company's intranet portal to post anonymized risk matrices and control effectiveness ratings, assuming all employees will access and interpret the information independently. Option D. Providing tailored summaries of the risk findings, using clear, non-technical language where appropriate for different stakeholder groups, alongside interactive workshops to discuss implications and gather feedback before final decisions are made. The correct answer is A. Disseminating a single, highly technical report detailing all risk factors, methodologies, and quantitative impact assessments, with a limited queue and a session scheduled only after all internal approvals are secured. Explanation. The principle of transparency and inclusivity in risk management, as espoused by ISO 31000-2018, emphasizes the importance of making the risk management process and its outcomes understandable and accessible to relevant stakeholders. This involves clear communication about the risks faced, the methods used to assess them, and the decisions made regarding their treatment. Inclusivity means engaging all relevant parties who have an interest in or are affected by the risks and the risk management process. This engagement ensures that diverse perspectives are considered, leading to more robust and accepted risk management outcomes. Key aspect of inclusivity is ensuring that those whose lives or work are impacted by the risks have a voice in the process, and that the information shared is readily comprehensible to them, avoiding jargon where possible. Transparency, in turn, builds trust and facilitates informed decision-making by all involved parties. Without these elements, risk management efforts may be perceived as arbitrary or may fail to address the full spectrum of concerns, potentially leading to resistance or ineffective controls. The effectiveness of risk management is significantly enhanced when stakeholders understand the rationale behind risk decisions and feel that their input has been valued. Question 26. When establishing a comprehensive risk management framework aligned with ISO 31000-2018, which principle most directly addresses the concept that risk management activities should be a fundamental aspect of all organizational processes, influencing strategic and operational decisions at every level? Option A. Structured and comprehensive approach. Option B. Integration. Option C. Continual improvement. Option D. Best available information. The correct answer is B. Integration. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management is not a standalone activity, but an integral part of all organizational processes, including decision-making, strategic planning, and operational activities. This integration ensures that risk considerations are embedded within the organization's culture and practices, rather than being an add-on. The standard promotes a systematic approach where risk management activities are woven into the fabric of the organization's governance, strategy, and operations. This means that risk assessment, treatment, monitoring, and communication are not confined to a specific department or phase, but are continuously applied across all levels and functions. For example, when developing a new product, considering the potential risks associated with market acceptance, technological feasibility, and regulatory compliance from the outset is crucial. Similarly, during the execution of a project, ongoing risk reviews and adjustments to mitigation strategies are essential. The effectiveness of risk management is enhanced when it is part of the organization's core processes, enabling proactive identification and management of uncertainties that could affect objectives. This holistic integration supports better decision-making, improved performance, and achievement of organizational goals by embedding risk awareness and management into the daily activities and strategic direction of the entity. Question 27. Consider a multinational corporation, Ethelred Dynamics, which operates in the highly regulated pharmaceutical sector. Following a recent strategic shift towards advanced biologics and facing increased scrutiny from international health authorities like the FDA and EMA regarding data integrity and supply chain transparency, Ethelred Dynamics is reviewing its risk identification process. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of ISO 31000-2018 for identifying potential risks stemming from these evolving operational and regulatory landscapes? Option A. A singular focus on technology-driven risk assessment tools that automatically scan for anomalies in production data and financial transactions. Option B. Implementing a broad, unguided brainstorming session among all employees to capture any perceived risks without prior context or structured guidance. Option C. Relying solely on an annual compliance audit conducted by an independent third party to identify all significant risks. Option D. A systematic review of historical incident reports, combined with expert workshops that incorporate insights from legal counsel specializing in pharmaceutical regulations and external auditors familiar with international compliance standards. The correct answer is D. A systematic review of historical incident reports, combined with expert workshops that incorporate insights from legal counsel specializing in pharmaceutical regulations and external auditors familiar with international compliance standards. Explanation. The core of effective risk identification within the ISO 31000 framework lies in its systematic and comprehensive nature, ensuring that potential events that could affect an organization's objectives are brought to light. This process is not merely about listing hazards, but about understanding the context in which risks emerge and how they might manifest. ISO 31000 emphasizes that risk identification should be an ongoing activity, integrated into all organizational processes. It advocates for a variety of techniques, including brainstorming, Delphi method, interviews, checklists, and scenario analysis, to uncover a broad spectrum of risks. The standard also highlights the importance of considering both internal and external factors, as well as the organization's objectives and the environment in which it operates. A critical aspect is understanding that risk identification is not a one-time event, but a continuous cycle that feeds into the broader risk management process. The quality of risk identification directly impacts the effectiveness of subsequent steps like risk analysis and evaluation. It requires a deep understanding of the organization's activities, its stakeholders, and the dynamic external landscape. The goal is to generate a comprehensive list of potential risks without necessarily quantifying them at this stage, paving the way for a thorough assessment. Question 28. Consider a global conglomerate, Ethelstan Dynamics, which operates in diverse sectors including advanced materials and renewable energy. The organization is currently undertaking a comprehensive review of its enterprise-wide risk management framework, aligning it with ISO 31000-2018 principles. A key challenge identified by the internal audit team is the inconsistent integration of insights from various operational units and external regulatory bodies into the risk assessment process. The Chief Risk Officer is seeking to enhance the framework's robustness by ensuring that all critical perspectives are systematically captured and considered. Which of the following approaches best reflects the spirit of ISO 31000-2018 concerning stakeholder involvement in this scenario? Option A. Conducting a series of internal training sessions for all employees on risk identification, with the expectation that this broad participation will naturally capture all necessary stakeholder perspectives. Option B. Mandating that all risk registers be signed off by the most senior executive within each operational unit, assuming their direct understanding of all inherent risks within their purview. Option C. Establishing a dedicated stakeholder advisory panel comprising representatives from key operational divisions, major investors, and relevant government regulators to provide input at the initial context setting and ongoing review phases of the risk management framework. Option D. Relying primarily on external risk management consultants to gather and interpret all stakeholder feedback, thereby ensuring objectivity and specialized expertise in the analysis. Correct answer is C. Establishing a dedicated stakeholder advisory panel comprising representatives from key operational divisions, major investors, and relevant government regulators to provide input at the initial context setting and ongoing review phases of the risk management framework. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that risk management is an integral part of an organization's overall governance and leadership. Effective risk management requires the involvement of relevant stakeholders throughout the entire process, from establishing the context to monitoring and review. Stakeholders are individuals, groups, or organizations who can be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by a decision or activity. Their perspectives, knowledge, and concerns are crucial for identifying risks, assessing their impact, and developing appropriate treatment strategies. Involving stakeholders ensures that the risk management framework is comprehensive, relevant, and accepted by those who will be impacted by its outcomes or who have a role in its implementation. This involvement fosters transparency, builds trust, and enhances the likelihood of successful risk mitigation. Without active stakeholder engagement, risk management efforts may overlook critical factors, encounter resistance, or fail to achieve their intended objectives. The standard advocates for a proactive approach to stakeholder identification and engagement, recognizing that their input contributes significantly to the quality and effectiveness of risk management activities. This includes understanding their expectations and ensuring their concerns are addressed within the risk management framework. Question 29. Ether Dynamics, a global aerospace manufacturer, relies heavily on a single supplier located in a region experiencing escalating political tensions and the threat of trade sanctions. The company's risk management team is conducting a detailed analysis to understand the potential cascading effects of a complete cessation of supply from this region, considering factors such as alternative sourcing feasibility, inventory levels, contractual obligations with clients, and the financial impact of production delays. What is the primary objective of Ether Dynamics' current analytical activity within the ISO 31000-2018 risk management framework? Option A. To solely document the identified risk for compliance reporting purposes. Option B. To explore potential future states and their impacts to inform risk treatment decisions. Option C. To establish legally binding force majeure clauses in all supplier contracts. Option D. To definitively predict the exact timing and magnitude of the supply chain disruption. Correct answer is B. To explore potential future states and their impacts to inform risk treatment decisions. Explanation. The scenario describes a company, Ether Dynamics, facing a potential disruption in its supply chain due to geopolitical instability in a key manufacturing region. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes the importance of understanding the context and the nature of risks. Scenario analysis, a technique often employed within the risk assessment phase, involves developing plausible future situations to explore potential impacts and responses. In this case, Ether Dynamics is not merely identifying a risk, supply chain disruption, but is actively exploring how such a disruption might unfold and its consequences. The question asks about the primary purpose of this activity within the risk management framework. The core of scenario analysis is to understand the potential outcomes and their implications, thereby informing the selection and implementation of risk treatments. It helps to move beyond a static view of risks to a more dynamic and adaptive approach. This allows for the development of more robust and flexible risk mitigation strategies that can address a range of potential futures, rather than a single predicted event. Therefore, the most accurate description of the purpose is to explore potential future states and their impacts to inform risk treatment decisions. Question 30. When establishing an effective risk management framework according to ISO 31000-2018, which of the following best encapsulates the primary purpose of the communication and consultation component throughout the risk management process? Option A. To document all risk-related activities and disseminate reports to regulatory bodies to ensure compliance with legal mandates. Option B. To exclusively inform senior management about identified risks and proposed mitigation strategies to expedite approval processes. Option C. To conduct periodic workshops for employees to raise general awareness about potential hazards without direct engagement in risk assessment. Option D. To facilitate informed decision-making and ensure stakeholder buy-in by providing opportunities for dialogue and feedback at all stages of risk management. The correct answer is D. To facilitate informed decision-making and ensure stakeholder buy-in by providing opportunities for dialogue and feedback at all stages of risk management. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that communication and consultation are integral to the entire risk management process, not merely a post hoc activity. Effective communication ensures that relevant stakeholders are informed about risks, the risk management process, and its outcomes. Consultation involves seeking input from stakeholders to gather diverse perspectives, improve the quality of risk management decisions, and foster buy-in. The standard highlights that the purpose of communication and consultation is to provide information to and foster understanding among stakeholders, and to obtain feedback, which is crucial for refining the risk management framework and its application. This continuous dialogue helps in identifying new risks, assessing existing ones more accurately, and developing more robust treatment strategies. It also aids in ensuring that the risk management activities align with the organization's objectives and are understood and supported by those affected. The effectiveness of communication and consultation is directly linked to the quality and relevance of the information shared and the inclusiveness of the engagement process.